I thought a conversation with you would be the most useful conversation about electoralism that I could have, because I feel like you have the best balance between like real radical thought and kind of like seeing through, I'll say, I want to try to choose my words carefully, because I also know there's a lot of people that's looking for you to eat me up.
Really?
Oh yeah, I'll come back to that. That's something we'll talk about. Not off the strength of you, just the
Right.
nature of how this shit works.
Yeah, yeah.
The balance between like real radical thought and like analysis and online performativity, if that makes
Right.
sense. But before we get into all that, I'm just happy to talk to you.
Me too,
Um,
man.
I've been a fan. I tell Jared all the time, y'all are like a lot of elders that I grew up around. Um, and like I miss that energy. I had a lot of experiences that had me not trusted for much of my adulthood. Because if I'm not mistaken, you have experiences in the conscious community. You come up out of that poetry
Yeah.
world. And so which means now that laugh tells me you also know the fuckery that
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
happens
yeah.
there. And I came up under that. Like I was a child witnessing a lot
Right.
of that conscious community, African marked, a lot of hustlers, a lot of people just trying to make it, people that's
Yeah.
resisting the system, but also like operating with clearly the same logic and ethos of what they're resisting.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of bad experiences. Like I would love the energy and the vibe and like the rhetoric, and I would see some of the activity. And so
Right.
like once I got like started entering adulthood, I distanced myself from it. And then you have
Right.
like people like Umar pop up and it's like, yeah, I made a good decision.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that stuff like you and Dr. Ball and a lot of the folks y'all rock with, I didn't know that was there really. You know what I'm saying? And since rediscovering that, I've been like, oh, I really need this to become the prominent image of that world.
Yeah.
At least more. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
that's the reality. It's just these pretenders are they were quicker to go to the internet.
Mm,
A lot of us were just doing our normal food drive work and stuff, and they really capitalized on it. And it's more, as Jared would say,
yeah,
algorithmically friendly.
yeah,
So his type of quips and one-liners, and also they cross a lot of lines because, like Dr. Fubar, he'll speak to the Black radicals, he'll speak to the Black evangelicals, he'll speak to the Black strivers, Black capitalists, Black prosperity folks.
hmm,
So they have a much wider appeal
yeah.
to where if you're really sincere and you stick to the line, you
You
kind
limit
of
your reach in that way.
relatively, not that we want to be limited, we're willing to speak to them, but they're not receptive to what we have to say. It's just easier to be a liar and a con man than to be sincere,
Yeah.
and this capitalist system rewards con men and liars,
Yes,
and
most definitely.
right, so that it incentivizes it.
I see that so much as I like find success. I find so many opportunities to like do
Yeah,
that. And I'm constantly in negotiation and trying to like, because some of it, one of the things that I feel like I discovered early on is how like selling out doesn't look how you imagine it.
right.
Like you imagine it as, like from your hip hop imagery, like you get invited to the meeting, they hold open the briefcase of gold
Mm.
and you say, I'll do it. You know what I'm saying? Whereas really it's like a series of compromises. It's a series of decisions where you, you know, negotiate your ethics. You say this one time, but like over time, you realize how quickly you can end up in a place you don't want to be because it seems so small and insignificant in the moment.
Right.
Um,
It's erosion.
yeah,
We focus a lot on collapse and destruction, and we ignore how things erode, and that's what they focus on. And selling out requires a buying into.
mm,
So most of the people I would define as sellout, they begin to really not say, well, I'm not selling out, this is what I truly believe. They buy into
yeah,
the lie, as opposed to promoting the lie to everyone else. And that's when it really becomes, who they are. They're not necessarily sellouts, they're traders.
Yeah.
Someone selling out, meaning I have this position and I'm willing to compromise it for some other gain or for some reason. But no, they're not. It's not that they're, because I think, again, sellouts is more or less, for lack of a better term, a more respectable position than buying into or being a trader. So it would be hard to call, again, as you mentioned, Dr. Fubar, a sellout, because he truly believes the shit he's saying. He truly wants.
Do you think he does?
Yeah.
I feel like so much of Dr. Umar is performative, especially as he's gotten more popular. He's leaned more into the things that he knows get him clicks and attention. Because every once in a while, you'll hear the nuggets of effectiveness from Dr. Umar, right? You hear like a somewhat cogent analysis of an issue. But then he does the Instagram live where he's shaking and repeating stuff 3 times and snow bunnies and stuff,
Yeah, but when he even calls something out, I could diagnose you with a cancer, but that doesn't mean my treatment and remedy will be effective just because I accurately diagnose something.
Right. I see.
So
I see.
Him being able to identify this thing, that's one thing. But what he prescribes as a solution is where we really measure his value.
Got you. Yeah, definitely.
So what are his he can break down how the education system fails our children. He can break down how systematic and systemic racism is so pervasive and sustained. He can even articulate some of the assaults the private and public sector has leveled against Black families, Black issues. But what remedies does he
don't marry white women, buy black, and
don't
that's kind of it. Don't be gay. Don't be gay. That's the easy one.
I know he's backed off of that to be more marketable.
He be popping. He be sprinkling in when he feels like he can.
Right. So his remedies are strong Black families, nuclear family, Black conservatism, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Black conservatism. Yeah. And capitalism, Black entrepreneur, Black capitalism, Black conservatism. And that's it. So people are so impressed that he can identify the problems. They just suggest, well, if someone takes time to understand the problem, then they must have taken time to understand the remedies. But if you go into a hospital, as you've just been in, you see that the diagnostic department is a whole separate department.
Right.
You don't go to diagnostics to fix your issue.
Right.
If you go to the diagnostic for treatment, you're doomed. Yeah. So you got to go to a whole nother area to get treatment. Whether it's surgery, the osteo department,
and his treatment. But the key, I think, is that his treatments are also comforting to a certain prominent Black ethos. It's including Blacks that will consider themselves radical, because I just had a conversation the other day on a different podcast, and I was talking to a couple of brothers who, like, ideologically speaking, we were aligned, but remedy speaking, they didn't want to. It was like they didn't want to hear all that. That kind of like common phrase. When I start talking about white supremacy and capitalism, and they say we don't want to hear nothing about no isms. Well, I'm like, well, you ain't really trying to solve the problem then. Like, what are we doing? If you don't want to hear about the explicit solution to the issue, then you're not really serious about solving the problem. And I think it's because for a lot of Black folks, the isms are the things we low-key want to embody. Black men and women. I speak specifically to Black men here because that's where I've had the most experience, but it don't take much analysis to see how Black women have infiltrated this same problem, contributed to the same problem. And it's like, okay, when I tell you that you're participating in an ism that harms Black people as a whole, you may get over, you may get your Greenwood Bank account, right? But
not a bank,
right? Exactly. Like when I said that to him in this talk, and I think that kind of I had won after that because they didn't know that, and that's kind of the thing because that's a comforting image to present to a Black person who is concerned, but not concerned enough, and or the sacrifices that they're open to start not just like too close to the line, it's well apart. It's very far above the bar or below the bar. Like if the bar is like halfway there, they're like a good 50% lower than that, you know?
Right.
So yeah. What do you
Well,
think?
it's just people play around with this. The bottom line is even most conscious people, they want all the benefits of empire and none of the liabilities.
Mm,
And a lot of Black leaders sell us the idea that we can retain all the benefits of industrial capitalism while shunning, attacking, and even eventually eliminating all of the liabilities.
right.
So you could have Black capitalism funded through reparations without imperialism, without resource exploitation, without destruction of ecosystems and contamination of ecosystems. You can have the nuclear family without the abusive hierarchies and the limiting of opportunities and to contribute a limit of development of people who are lower on that rung. The women and children within the nuclear unit don't have to. So that is the line that they walk. We can get freedom for Black people, but still maintain all of the hierarchies, all the material excesses and other things that are a fundamental element of the system we claim to be fighting. And then
Right.
when you talk about sacrifice, it's real funny. You'll meet dudes in the movement that are willing to give their life, but not willing to fold laundry or change diapers.
Right,
You know,
right. To
they
change a diaper,
right.
defer to a woman who has a better idea. They
Exactly. So they're
see a
like, yeah,
gay
I'm ready
man
to
as an
die for this.
equal
I'll give my life
contributor.
for this. I'll kill for this. But like, can you fold the laundry after she washes it to help
Yeah,
maintain some balance?
right.
You know, so
Can
yeah,
y'all not be so openly like just don't be so openly homophobic
right.
so that quick brothers in the movement can be
Exactly.
chill. You ain't gotta like the bar's low. Just don't be openly homophobic. If we could get that, like I know a lot of gay brothers, they don't need a lot just to be left
Yeah.
alone and not openly disrespected. That's
Right. So
yeah.
yeah, so that's what the revolution, as Dale Jones, it's a process, it's not an event. And it's
Mhm.
an intellectual endeavor. People want to dress, articulate, and equip themselves for revolution or the revolutionary aesthetic. But the Pan-African and revolutionary aesthetic and rhetoric are not the same as Pan-African ideology and agendas.
Mhm.
And so the internet is saturated with the aesthetic and the rhetoric.
Right.
But as far as the ideology and agenda component of it, it's not as interesting.
Yeah.
It's not as exciting.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it doesn't really translate to the Hollywood CGI uh media diet that we've come to expect. No.
I made the critique in one of my videos. I've touched on this critique, I should say, that we have Garvey and we have Du Bois in terms of the Pan African. I think that's somewhat, and I've been told I'm less fair to Garvey than he deserves. Part of that is again my personal negative experiences because I feel like Garveyites and Garveyism are more likely to be, as you say, in the Dr. Fubar camp. Um, and Du Bois is completely detached from the Pan African movement in popular culture. Um, and like when I, you know, look at Garvey's legacy specifically, the things that he was maybe worse at are now like to me the most prominent features of a certain aesthetic and ethos around Pan-Africanism. And Du Bois has his own L's. It's really interesting because Du Bois low key got worse L's than Garvey. But I think it's like to engage with those L's, you also have to engage with his position with the more radical from a more radical standpoint. You have to acknowledge his radicalism of his like legacy. And I think they just kind of want to keep him as this like creator of the talented 10th ethos. And since they're going to do that and keep him there, he founded all the HBCUs. We're going to keep him there, and we won't touch on the eugenics or the socialism. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's kind of like something I've put forward. Now, I open myself up to critique for that, but the bombastic nature and the ability for it to attain clout and capital, even if it within a small, pocket community of the conscious community, the what we call pork chop nationalists, etc. That type of bombastic, chest beating energy that if you are a black men in this world and you see a black man being able to perform that effectively, that's inspiring because
Yeah.
you're warned against that.
I used to do. I was with this group, Sons of Men. We were all raw foodist, black nationalist monks. You know,
That's
abstinence,
that's dope.
strict diet. We would wake up in the morning and get our coconuts and fruit from our ancestral and Orisha shrines and take them out into the woods and make an offering to the ancestors. And we go on these Achosi runs where we do this obstacle course, this natural obstacle course, and we were all just ready and mapping out the sewers and the choke points within the urban core
Oh
for
wow.
guerrilla warfare.
Y'all was ready.
Yeah, and that part was very necessary to my own development, my own analysis. I
Mm.
have no issue with that. It was like an informal rites of passage. Now, most of the guys in there were, you know, I had to say chump suckers and fools, and everybody was there they were there for a myriad of reasons, and they were engaging for and seeking a myriad of outcomes. There was really no alignment or no one movement, even though we felt that all wearing these African garbs and going to these drum circles and Akan rituals and doing all and eating this strict, living this ascetic lifestyle while our peers was up in the club.
Mm.
And I was always chastised for, and you know, it was very cultish.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm like, wow, this is some cultish shit. And but I have no issue with young people going through that. It's a necessary, you know, evolution. But a lot of people lock in at stages of the development. You know,
Yeah.
they stay in the chrysalis,
Yeah.
and the chrysalis becomes all, and they never go beyond that shit. So the performative blackness, the theatrical blackness, the symbolic blackness, the aesthetic blackness, I respect it, I understand it, but you have to diffuse it into the, like I said, organization, scholarship, analysis, because if it is just locked in that, what once was a springboard for you to go ahead becomes like something you're locked into,
Like
becomes a prison.
quicksand. Yeah.
Yeah.
You struggle. Yeah. So with that, I think that's a good transition to kind of like one of the main things I wanted to spend a lot of time on, which is balancing the affinity and the energy of radical politics with the reality of the options we're faced with. So I'm kind of in a weird position in that I'm probably going to vote for Kamala Harris, especially here in Georgia, and then I'm also like developing a more, let's say, robust organizing apparatus for my platform.
Right.
Because I'm not voting for Kamala Harris like who, Kendi X, Ibram X Kendi or somebody. You know what I mean? Like with that in mind, to me, it's just there's two possible people that are going to be president. One of them presents more problems than the other, from my assessment. And and I live in a state that it's meaningful. My vote is much more meaningful here in Georgia than Texas, you know what I'm saying? Or even Chicago. And I find myself dissatisfied with both things I'm doing. I find myself dissatisfied with the fact that I'm voting for Kamala and the response to that, as well as dissatisfied with the fact that I'm critiquing Kamala and explaining that I'm voting like while holding my nose. Because I was shocked at. So let's get to the things I think we both fully agree on. Kamala does not inspire me. She was the first person out the race in 2020. She does not have a great background. Like overall, she's got a couple of cool things that I don't give a ton of credit to because I think it's just her being a politician. And she did nothing to inspire any real loyalty or hope in her 4 years as a vice president. She's ifed at some better decisions during her run, but has squarely found herself running on this exact same platform that we could have expected from Joe Biden. And I was just shocked at the immediate, I didn't think they were going to pick her. I figured they just go get them a white boy that they knew could run against another white boy, be safe, be cool. And then I was like, oh, I call them the Black Excellence Brunch crowd.
Mm.
The Black Excellence Brunch crowd is ready. They ready like Obama in 2012, if not '08.
Yeah.
And I found myself having a way more unpopular opinion than I would have among Black liberals and Black moderates who I'm in community with. And then also amongst, radical folks, Black and otherwise. Um, and so it was like, oh, I'm just not gonna make any content. I'm gonna just keep all this to myself. But I also feel like that would be more of a cop out than to
Right.
not use the platform to at least make a statement, and especially a statement that I think is more useful than, don't ever vote, voting is bad, voting it means supporting genocide, versus vote and she'll fix it. And it's like, how is the middle of this conversation so underdeveloped?
Right.
And am I wrong for thinking that?
Because it's not the middle.
Mm,
That's the problem.
mm,
So there is no, the same people who will tell you that there's no ethical consumption under capitalism will turn around and tell you that there is an ethical vote or unethical vote. Politicians in this system, everything has been reduced to a commodity.
mm.
Politicians are products that are branded, marketed, and sold to us, the parties and the politician. And so just as you going to purchase a product from the co-op or from your local business, or versus purchase it from Whole Foods, or you go and vote for this politician, none of it's this political system that, and there's no lesser or greater evil and all of that shit. That's just empty. This system is a system founded on genocide and slavery, and it is sustained on genocide, ecocide, and slavery. Ecocide is relatively new, has come up with the globalization and hyper-industrialization and efficiencies within capitalism. Genocide, ecocide, and exploitation of labor, prison labor, and overseas under or uncompensated labor. That's what this system is. It's never been anything other than that. So African people have had to navigate this system or choose martyrdom.
Mm.
I say, like Malcolm X said, the ballot or the bullet. Many of our prominent Blacks are ballot nor bullet. They're ballot nor bullet. This conversation is not for anyone in open conflict, open or subversive acts against the state. Then you don't need this conversation. Anybody else who's navigating this state, working jobs, paying taxes, sending children to school, trying to pay a car note, trying to sustain shelter over their head, anyone who's navigating this system as they work to subvert or fundamentally transform the system, you need to be engaged in politics. You need to be engaged in the political system, the political apparatus, the political culture of this system. Not because it will save you, not because it will transform itself or fix itself, or not even because you can eventually find a politician that can go on and save it. This is an entrenched system that is going to take a multi-generational struggle to undermine, subvert, to purge. As we do that, depending on what stage we're in the resistance, we have to employ rational tactics and strategies in order to sustain ourselves to do the work. Now, when every election cycle, there are certain things that are on the ballot, and you notice people always focus on shit that's not on the ballot.
Mm.
They like to bring up things that aren't on the ballot. You think Kamala going to save you?
Right.
Salvation's
You think
not on the
Kamala give
ballot.
reparations? Like, reparations not
Right.
on the ballot.
Reparations not on the ballot. Being saved, but if they discuss what was truly on the ballot, and many of these people who are anti-democrat had to discuss only policy issues that are on the ballot or on the platforms or in the policy assertions of the parties, they would find that they don't align with the sentiments and interests of the majority of the people. So I will come up with this line item or this position that neither party, and unfortunately, an end to genocide is not on the ballot. a cessation of genocidal military deployment and funding proxy wars is not on the ballot. Rescue of the ecosystem is not on the ballot. Restoration of the planetary balance and ecosystem is not on the ballot. And we can discuss these things are not on the ballot, whether or not the system is even capable of that, or how we're going to bring these things about that we want, that are, I would say, infinitely more important than what's on the ballot. So when we return to say what's on the ballot and what are they saying, and let's argue just that, what's on the ballot, what can be obtained, what can be secured, or what can be lost in this particular election cycle, and how does that speak to my interest as a revolutionary, as a Pan-Africanist? How do what's actually on the ballot, what's possible, what's achievable? And then after I discuss what's achievable and possible, and what can be voted to advance, obstruct, or retract. And then you have to say, well, this is our plan of action in opposition to a Harris-Walz versus a Trump-Vance. There should already be your strategy of opposition and subversion and countermeasures against both parties, even if you voted for one or the other. This is very simple. Every nation in the world that seeks to be a global player has interest in investments in the U.S. political system. Every economic entity, a multinational corporation, local business has interest in the U.S. political system. This is the sole global superpower, according to their own rhetoric. I might argue otherwise, but they're the sole superpower. And if you are not engaging with this sole superpower to advance your interests, then you're not really serious about your interests. And most of these political speakers and political actors in our community are not about advancing our collective interests through the political system or in opposition to the political system. They're only interested in raising their own profile and status so that they can better extract resources from our community.
If I could pause you for a second, because you're cooking and I love it. One of the reasons why I knew I wanted to talk to you, I put out a video. I've talked about Kamala maybe twice in videos, and each time in my head I'm more negative than I must be coming off. But I have to admit that my comment section is a little less radically inclined than my pride wants to acknowledge, if that makes sense. And I had a handful of these air quotes. I'm not going to die on the hill with these air quotes, but I had a handful of black radicals get at me on Twitter and in the comment section. And the air quotes are there because one dude, he has like Kamal follows him, you know what I'm saying? He has activists, whatever in his name. And I didn't work super hard to reach out, but when I rung a few calls and said, do y'all know this dude? Nobody knew who he was. And he has over 100,000 tweets. He has over 100,000 tweets since 2017. This is not like a 2008 OG tweeter. Right. This is a professional tweeter. Right. Tons of memes, tons of retweets, etc. And like that kind of, and I was feeling like, you know, it's funny because I had my moment of involving myself in a lot of drama via my content and like in other content spaces, because you fuck around with white people and white people get on your nerves and you want to say something. But then I started kind of really peeping the mechanisms of all of this, especially as you get bigger. And I was like, you know what? It's not really in my best interest or the best interest of the people in politics I want to promote to do too much playing in the mud with these folks. So I kind of like swore off drama over a little over a year ago. And if it's not somebody like y'all that I respect a criticism from, I usually don't acknowledge it. But this one kind of hit my ego a little bit. So I was, you know, I was in there a little bit, and then I had to stop when I saw that, because what you just said about raising their own profiles, to me, I see, and it's, I'm trying to balance my perception of a person who feels unsatisfied with both the options and the way I'm regarded in response to those options. And I know I have that bias, but I also have the bias of knowing how these platforms and shit works and knowing like performers when I see them. You know what I'm saying? And you know, knowing how putting my name in a byline or a tweet or a response video to kind of low key explain, say something, make me say something I didn't say, is a criticism that I can't really. I wish I had better. You know what I mean? Because I want to refine the thoughts I have on this with people that I think have better analyses. But that's not, that's not an ideal. That's not the ideal for content. Like, and going back to what I said earlier, there's going to be people that see this that we share fan bases with that are going to be disappointed that you don't like dig in on me at some point in time. You know
Well,
what
I
I'm
was
saying?
getting there.
Okay. We won't leave them too unsatisfied. Won't leave them
Well,
too unsatisfied.
I might,
Right. But
I've been
just just to kind of to tease that out, it's like for those people, and then there's gonna be people that will want me to fight back and to show myself worthy of, standing toe to toe with Diallo in my audience. And it's like, I'm not here for either of y'all. You know
listen,
what I'm saying?
voting. I said on record saying voting for Kamala is short term. It's a short term political strategy that I understand that for some populations that I'm sympathetic to, but I think ultimately it will not have any long-term positive effects, and there's greater potential for long-term negative effects.
Mm.
But that's just potential. Another Trump administration turns those small, minute potentials into absolute losses immediately. So I understand, because a lot of these people that take these particular principled political stances, they don't get food stamps, they don't get WIC, they're not under crippling medical debt or school debt. They have enough resources where they can secure their medication, their prescription medications. They're cisgendered, heterosexual, so their ability to get the treatment, gender affirming treatment or adopt children, is not under threat. So most of the people that I find taking these
Number one, gender
stances,
affirming surgery. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted, when I
what
found
did
this
I
out.
say?
No, you said it right. But I wanted to add a little nugget. Number one gender affirming surgery in the country for young men is nippleplasty, gyno nippleplasty.
Right.
Because dudes don't like having puffy nipples like a girl.
Well, I say it all the time. Most of the gender affirming treatments and drugs that transgender people benefit from were created for cisgendered people to
Right.
affirm our gender identity.
Right.
And I worked in healthcare for over a decade, and I've seen people attempt suicide, cisgendered heterosexual men attempt suicide because their physical form does not conform with their gender identity, which is kind of blows my mind, having been a cisgendered heterosexual man all my life, that we can't really comprehend gender confirmation.
Right.
When brothers out here literally beating people down and killing other people
To
when their
affirm
gender
manhood.
identity is challenged or
Yeah.
somehow undermined. I thought Black men, particularly, but heterosexual men as a population, should understand gender identity and gender confirmation more than anybody, because we go harder in the paint
Right.
for our gender identity than any other demographic.
I've had that same exact
Like
take.
we get mad that transgender people want proper pronouns, but if you ever went to a basketball court to pay a pickup basketball game, and in any way do anything that doesn't validate the gender of the brothers around you, you got a problem. So, that kind of confused. But
And
back
this
to
is not
that.
to say that there's no child having poor trans people that are never vote Kamala people, but like I've had the same perception that the average person I've seen, the typical person I've seen promoting this,
Right.
is much closer to my socioeconomic
Right.
stance than
When Reagan took office, at that time, I was living in public housing. I was on Medicaid. I was on food stamps. I received free lunch. I was going to public school, and I was taking saxophone and guitar lessons paid for by a state grant that was funded by the federal government. I was on the teat, not to mention the free cheese and powdered milk. And I eat the free cheese, but I make this concoction with the powdered milk to feed the project cats, where our neighborhood had a bunch of stray cats. And when Reagan took office, there was an appreciable, measurable decline in what the terminology wasn't around back then, but the quality of life, our access to resources, and the availability and consistency of the resources, because he ran on a ticket saying that my mother was going to
Like the system.
buy Cadillacs with her food stamps.
Right.
Wasn't it? And my grandmother, I was actually raised by my grandmother who had adopted us, who was retired and on several public assistances. So I greatly understand the relationship between administrations and the direct impact on the livelihood and opportunities of people that the state oppresses.
Right. If I could add
And
real quick, I'm sorry, that in the conversations I have with politically engaged proletariat, you know, air quotes proletariat black folks, this whole non-voting shit sounds silly to them because they say, unfortunately, some of them say some maybe not so great things about like the ongoing things outside of the US, but they know that struggle that you're talking about, and they know what happens when Republicans get in office and cut all the resources for the sake of saying that they're doing something to perpetrate that narrative of welfare, while they provide welfare for the top 1% and corporations and et cetera, et cetera. And like that's another thing that's stilled me somewhat in my decision making is I don't know your academic background, but like as a recovering academic, a halfway there guy that left to do YouTube, I find it I find both parts of the academia, the parts that are like super radical without facing the consequences of what that means, and the parts that are completely in the Ibrahim Kendi box, dissatisfying for that reason, because there's a much large majority of black folks that we purport to speak for, but we never speak to.
Right.
You know?
And most black people are not radical. They're not Pan-Africanists, and they seek relief within the system. It is our job to radicalize the black masses and demonstrate to them that our position, our outlook, and our proposed solutions are more viable to not only to you as you live now, but to our descendants, kinship and eternity. That's our job that we fail at. Because we don't start where we are and we don't work with what we have. We have a lot of black people that we want to tell them and talk to about black power, but we don't demonstrate to them and articulate to them how they can utilize and mobilize the power and positioning that they have now, so that they can go to greater levels of coordination and strategizing and execution of greater level of power. So to simply go not Democrat is not an ideology. Not voting is not a strategy. So as you engage the political system, and I get in trouble for this because people are like, wow, I just can't believe it, that I advocate for voting in every election. And inevitably, that goddamn jury card that you're going to get called for jury duty, go to that shit too.
Yeah, me too.
Not because I believe in the system, but I acknowledge the fact that we are subject to this system. Diagnosis. This system has power over us and the rest of the world. The system is more likely than not going to be here when we wake up in the morning. So we have to maneuver in the world, identify choke points, identify vulnerabilities, and identify populations that we can bring over to us to exploit and expand those vulnerabilities and take advantage of the choke points. It's not really that complex. As far as voting for an African person, I didn't like you using the word inspiration. Being inspired, and the word inspiration in U.S. politics or U.S. elections should never go together for any African person. Dr. Bobby Wright said, black people, we've been in this country the longest and we understand it the least. Even if I showed up on the ballot, people who support me should not be inspired. Inspiration has nothing to do I had another dear brother, brilliant brother, say to me, "Oh, save us. Kamala's not going to save us. Save freedom, inspiration. When we engage the political system, we need to be cold, distant, and calculating. It is a tool for which we can reduce or reverse harm. We can extract resources, or we can obstruct or upend or disrupt agendas. That's pretty much all that's available to us. And the only reason I say those three things are what's available to us through the political system is because that's what has happened in history. I don't deal with what could have, should have, would have happened. Historically, African people have been able to win concessions through the political system, through manipulation, through coalition building, or through disruption and uprising and rebellions. We can secure concessions. More likely than not, in most election cycles, we are really strategically determining who do we want to fight against, who is most vulnerable to our will and to our interest. Not who serves our interest, but who is least effective at upending or obstructing our interest. What can we extract? Can we get people within there to either sympathize or to buckle out of fear or expediency to our interests? Is extremely simple. You can ask yourself, I'm going to fight against this system. Do I want to fight against this system with leaded gasoline or non-leaded gasoline? You know, it kind of comes down to that, because you have to fight. And I have went into a poll and voted for a politician, and in under a month, I'm outside their neighborhood offices,
Right.
protesting and denouncing.
In my perfect dream state, Kamala gets elected and we out there in the streets like Trump did.
Like that. I'll say this to you though. Mm-hmm. Anybody, black person that votes for Kamala out of short-term agendas and expediency, your obligation to oppose, denounce, and undermine her fuckery is greater than we who ain't voting for her. Y'all need to be on the front lines. Y'all need to be the first to inhale the tear gas.
That's real. That's real. And that's kind of the other side of the problem. My next video is about black cops. And so I spend the last 15, 20 minutes of it, I imagine, on Kamala. And in so many words, I say, I'm voting for Kamala, but here's all the ways she got me fucked up.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this. I've been engaged in the political system since Reagan versus Carter. And I've been watching, and my background, my formal education is in political science and public policy. The first election I was eligible to vote in was Bush versus Clinton. And the only one time in my entire life have I ever voted for a candidate that actually took office of the presidency. And that was Obama's first term. And it took a lot to get me to vote for Obama. I mean, seriously, I was a member of the National Black United Front, and the leadership all had me locked in a room. Well, I'm not going to be dramatic. They came to my establishment. They came to my little vegan restaurant and closed and locked the door behind them and sat me down and was like, you got to stop all this Obama hate. We got people on the ground working for Obama's campaign. We got this new tool. Dr. Linwood Tahi was there, and they were giving me all these books, Obamanomics and Dreams of My Father. And they were like, you got to stop hating on Obama. And I'm like, fine, in the name of organizational discipline, I'm going to go ahead and vote for this motherfucker. It was one of the worst 4 years of my life in terms of my activists and being out there. Because I'm like, this shit is on me. This shit is on me. Because before, I'm like, yeah, y'all voted for this motherfucker. Yeah, I'm out there marching. I'm out there protesting. I'm out there strategizing and organizing. But I'm organizing against y'all fuckery. That was the first one. And then after that, I didn't vote for him a second time. And they didn't even
bother
have the nerve to ask me. Because what I said was true. I said an Obama presidency would be a catastrophe for the Black community. And the Black community has yet to recover from that. Obama's presidency fundamentally corrupted Black political thought and Black culture for generations. For the first time in U.S. history, was there ever a military adventure, a military conflict where the white majority stood in opposition to U.S. military aggression, where the majority of Black people stood in favor of it. Mm. Since Black people were acknowledged to be humans and certified as citizens in the late 1800s, whenever the polling was done and they sought Black people's opinion or position, Black people always opposed the military state as a majority, to the point where we were called pinko. We were always seen as sympathizing with the enemies of America, insufficiently patriotic. You can go to the Vietnam War and every major conflict of the U.S., the Black community was like, yo, we don't trust it. We live in America. So when America
Right.
talking about going somewhere for freedom and democracy, we never trusted it.
Right.
And for the first time, when Obama was going into Syria and Yemen, committing international war crimes, and they polled the U.S. populace, Black people as a group outnumbered white
Obama.
Folks. And that is something to show that Black people, if the aesthetics are right, if you chocolate coat imperialism, if you can put a chocolate coating and wrap a kente cloth around genocidal imperialism, you can get the majority of Black people to enthusiastically endorse it.
And that's the...
Which I wouldn't have said that before Obama.
Right. And that's the scary thing I see as a not so unlikely outcome of Kamala, because I was shocked. So my first time voting ever, well, I'm sorry, my first time voting for a president that won was Obama as well. My first time voting was I think it's a similar thing. My first time voting was Bush v. Gore. And then whoever ran against Bush the second time. And then when Obama hit, I think a lot of millennials my age and a little younger, that was this magical thing. It was a real life magical Negro. Come to life, smiling, sashaying, smooth talking, etc. And I wasn't connected to any real radical tradition at the time. So I didn't hear no negative. Only negative I heard was some, I can't say the word on YouTube. But from, dumpster diver and marsupials. Are they marsupials? Rodents? Anyway. But by the end of that 4 years, because I didn't have that real political analysis, that radical analysis, I didn't know why, but I was like, ew, this is all wrong on multiple levels, and I don't know what to do with that. And I think a whole generation of, and this is why I have some hope, and I'm hoping to activate on, because I think there's a generation of disaffected Obama voters my age and younger who are there for the okie doke and feel and fear like them running the same play again.
But I don't know how you could be. I mean, everybody was telling me when he made his DNC speech, everybody was like, you got to hear that speech. And then when he gave his speech on race, one thing I got to say about Obama, he lied about a lot of shit. But one thing he didn't lie to is about his position and intentions for the Black community.
Yeah.
He never lied or deceived us in a goddamn way. He lied about a lot of shit. I can go down his lies, and even more importantly, to this day, I think he's an international war criminal. I actually went to see Obama speak, and I'm like, let me get out of here before I do some goofy ass citizens arrest bullshit. I'm like, I don't want to be in the same room as that man.
But he believed in that American exceptionalism, which I don't think Kamala does. I think the one good thing, air quotes, between them and comparing them to is I think Obama truly believed his bullshit, and I think Kamala just wants power. Does that make sense?
What's she gonna do with it?
Fuck if I know. See
that thing with somebody just wanting power. I can respect that. I'm a big fan of comic books, and often I'm more interested in the supervillains than the heroes. Mm-hmm. So if she was a supervillain, I'd respect it. To me, she's a mid-level bureaucrat. She's she's a very cunning bureaucrat, but I don't think she has personally within her any type of ideology or any internal or innate agenda.
Yeah. I completely
She
agree.
does want that position and all that comes with being the first queen of America. Mm. But in terms of like, I can look at Bill Gates and I'm like, this guy has an outlook and an agenda. But most people that aspire to and secure the presidency, more so, they are outputs for other agendas to execute what their funders, what their
Right.
financiers. I think Obama had bigger plans. He's like, I might be in office 4 to 8 years, but I got decades of living off of that. So I think Obama's main goal was not to piss off the people who are going to make me a billionaire
Mm.
after I get out of office.
Yeah.
You know, like I have a friend who's a black entrepreneur, and his whole goal was to make his product attractive enough so that PepsiCo or Kraft will show up and buy him out. That was his whole point of being in business. Even though if you go to any of his like events or promotional campaigns, it's all I'm black business, family owned business, woo 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 woo.
Right.
And when I'd go to his warehouse and talk to him, he'd be like, "Yeah, you know, I'm just waiting for Kraft to make that call and come through and buy me out, and I'm done." He's like, "You think I want to make money by working? That's corny." So a lot of these politicians are like, yeah, they want to inspire us, but their main goal is to walk out of there and be on the boards. Look at the boards that Michelle Obama is on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Obama, the day he got out of office, went and got put in a headlock by Sir, the Virgin Records
Right.
billionaire.
Right.
What's his name, Sir Richard?
Richard Branson, maybe?
Yeah, Branson. Sir Branson had him in a head knock doing
Like,
a nickel.
you little
And that's
nigga.
what he wanted. That's his whole presidency about. We thought it was hope and change. He's like, no, I want to be able to sit on
I'm showing motherfuckers what I
$30
can
million
do. What I can do
yachts.
with y'all niggas.
Right.
And wasn't he, if I don't know if I got this from Jared or someone, there was a whole coalition of these Negroes that they groomed in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. It was him, it was Deval Patrick, it was Cory Booker. What was that? But I know the details to that. Is that something you know? You remember the details too?
Yeah, Zbigniew Brzezinski. That yeah, they all came out of the same apparatus.
Mm.
The DLC, Democratic Leadership Council. And so, and and I say this all the time, not to let the Republicans off the hook, but this is just demonstrable. The fucking Republicans went crazy because the Democrats bit their whole shit.
And they're doing it
The,
now.
the
But
Democrats
sorry, go
put
ahead.
the Republicans in the position that they would have to either become the leftist party or go off the cliff towards the right. Because and that's the same thing that happened with the Democrats. The Democrats were the racist party, and the
Right.
Republicans was like, "Oh, we want to be the racist party. Let's just bite their whole shit, suck a MC, and take their whole style."
Right.
And so the Democrats had a choice. We could either be hyper racist. We can't just be racist. We have to go full Nazi, eugenicists, genociders, or we can move to the center and become the anti-racist. Because Bill Clinton with NAFTA, Kafka, the omnibus crime bill. When Bill Clinton was elected as a Democrat, he was just slam dunking long-standing Republican policies, left and right. He deployed the against, and at the same time, he was attacking the militia movement, going to war with. So he bit their whole shit. While he feel our pain and playing saxophone on the most prominent black thing, he was advancing, and the Republicans was like, "Oh shit, he stole all our tricks." And not only did he take our platform, he successfully implemented our platform. Shit we've been trying to push through for decades. And so the Republicans were like, well, we're going to go even fucking crazier. We're going to go even further to the right. And so that's why the Republicans are fucking despicable.
Right.
They are overt racists, overt Nazis. They're despicable. And I don't see any redeeming element or anything within that arena. Anything within that arena where black people can even say, well, we'll go over there. There's nothing to manipulate. There's nothing to extract. There's nothing to negotiate in the Republicans. Utterly despicable. But they became that as a result of the Democrats biting their whole shit.
I made a post that said, the Democrats of today are the Republicans of my childhood, and the Republicans of today are villains from Captain Planet.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
the fucking Republicans should have moved left. Republican parties would run. They would be the most predominant party if they had just made a leftward shift. Like, oh, you want to be the right wing party? You want to be the pro-capitalist party? Remember, under Clinton, that was the first time the Democrats reached parity and eventually surpassed the Republicans in corporate fundraising.
mm,
The constituents of the Republican were multinational corporations and institutional investors. The constituency and funders of the Democrats prior to Clinton were labor unions, lawyers,
mm.
because class action lawsuits before the Bush administration were extremely viable. And most class action lawyers were born out of multinational corporations failing to meet corporate government federal regulations and federal standards.
Mm.
And so the trial lawyers, that's why the whole sleazy lawyer propaganda and had
Oh,
people
yeah.
lawyers,
Yeah.
that was born out of corporations hated these sleazy lawyers because these sleazy lawyers,
But get justice for
at
the
the same
people.
time they were enriching themselves, they were bringing remedies to injured consumers and injured workers and validating and sustaining federal regulations over these conglomerates. Where the Republicans say we just need to enforce laws on individuals who break the crime, not on institutions that break the law. And so all of this understanding, we've been in this country, we don't really grasp these machinations. And with all of that, there are interests for Black people that were ignored, misrepresented, abused, exploited. And we were in positions that if we properly position ourselves, we can address those. And even at the same time, win concessions from the state. At the same time, we stand in opposition of the state. And we don't understand, it is not a contradictory to vote and navigate this system. At the same time, you're at ideological, principled, and political and cultural warfare against the system.
And
In
that's kind
every
of,
major conflict, there was always ongoing talks and negotiations.
and that's like, to me, the thing that frustrated me and brought me immediately back to, I think, one of the first videos of yours I watched, which is talking about the electoralism and voting and whatnot, was that what you're speaking to me makes absolute sense, but is going back to the first part of our conversation, it's not bombastic. You know what I'm saying? It don't
I
get
was
the,
doing hand gestures.
yeah, but it don't, but but you can do hand gestures, but if you can't beat your chest and be loud, you can't beat yourself and be loud with logical, strategic movement. You know what I mean? But you can celebrate and deify an Obama or a Kamala, or you can present the imaginary mythos that you and your, you know, I'm about to say some stuff. I was about to say some stuff, get me in trouble. That you and your friends from undergrad that all work at, that all do podcasts and post on Twitter all day are going to be on the front line catching that tear gas. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, neither of those things, to me, they present enthusiastic ways to communicate and educate, which is one of the things I'm like focused on. I don't want to be on nobody board. I don't want to be nobody's leadership team. I don't know enough. I just got back to these politics after most of my adulthood of avoiding them. I don't belong there, but I do know how to tell a story, and I have amassed a platform, and I know how to educate. So I want to get those tools, but you're never gonna. I just think but I could be doing better if I pick the side. So much of the online part of this political movement is white, petite bourgeois to bourgeois young people, many of which have literally never met a Black person in person, in real life. You know what I'm saying? They got all the words, all the enthusiasm, but it's not built out of a practical ethos. It's built off of, they were presented with Pokemon in undergrad, and they chose the leftist Pokemon. You know what I mean? Or maybe they chose the liberal Pokemon and then were eventually pulled a little bit further left. They may even chose the conservative Pokemon and then traded it in for a leftist Pokemon halfway through. But they don't understand the fundamental like needs and issues behind those politics. but they fucking love to play Pokemon. You feel me? And I realized I'm a Pokemon trainer. Like that's low key my role. And I get frustrated because like these people don't understand that the way they respond to these discourses, like I had somebody hit me up on Instagram today, talk about Brett Cooper. Why aren't you talking about Brett Cooper? She's a fascist. And like I don't have any, like that's not how this works. Shout out to you, my bad homie. I didn't mean to put you on blast if you see this. But I'm not making no videos about fucking Brett Cooper. I don't know if you know who she is. She's basically what's the Jewish brother's name? Well, not brother, but Jewish white guy's name. That's he built the Daily Wire.
Oh,
Ben Shapiro. She's
yeah,
basically Ben Shapiro gender swapped as like a young.
pussy.
Yeah, right. She's like a Gen Z gender swap Ben Shapiro. It's really.
Oh yeah, that's that girl that pretends like she's in her bedroom when she's sitting in a studio.
Yeah, it's really whack. And it's like, why do I need to talk about this? I think better of me than to waste my analysis and time to do an
anti-Brett. A lot of people talking about her. I know exactly what you're talking about, but
yeah. But they're only talking about her like there's certain so I'm gonna still play the hits, right? I didn't make a Drake Kendrick video because the world needed another Drake Kendrick video.
Right.
I was passionate about the topic. I knew it was gonna be a hit, and I knew I could do it better than everybody else, so I did it. But so I get that. Well, I'm sorry, better than
no. I'm saying
you got some
I value remedial work as a product of special ed. Who I was placed in special ed when I was in grade school. I admire and see the value in remedial work as long as you know you're doing remedial work when you're doing it.
Yeah.
The problem is when people think the remedial work is high comedic science 4D chess. When they answer remedial shit, that's when it becomes problematic. Because a lot of times I don't want to really go down there either. I don't want to pick the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
You know, I sure in hell don't want to talk about Trump's bitch ass. I just it's exhausting. But for the people who do, there are some people that every time, you know, he fails to properly conjugate a verb, they make a whole video. Trump is declining mentally. I appreciate that, and I think it's people out there who need it. And that's great. And I just might, you know, want to do some sexy red fuck my baby daddy review type shit. But as long as I know, I'm gonna break it down for y'all. See, so the only problem with remedial work and picking at low-hanging fruit is when people don't understand that's what they're doing or acknowledge that that's what they're doing.
Or I'll add, try to progress people further along the line. You know, there's a critique I caught that I didn't agree with, but I think it's an important critique to make, which is that folks with platforms that are leftists, they imagine themselves as the appropriate, you know, extent of the politic. That anything beyond me is not right, is wrong, and there's no value there. It ends here with my take. This is the radical take, you know, that you should be taken seriously. And I do see that even among some Black creators, I don't think I see it purposefully, but I don't see enough to counteract that because this does so much to the messaging. Like people will give me way more credit and accolades than I deserve because I've built a platform and now I'm FD signifier, which is one of the reasons why I stopped. I've done way less political. This cop video is gonna be the first like overtly political video I've done in over a year because I peaked that last year.
All your shit is political.
But you know, but like overtly.
What are you talking about?
You mean I mean like overtly political? Like I'm overtly presenting like my shit is political, but I'm talking about anime. Like I make this joke. Yes, I jingle keys in front of niggas. You know, it's like, hey, gender wars. Well, what's this? Dialectical material. Like, but like I'm talking about videos where I'm like, no, let me break down why Farrakhan was a counterinsurgent feature of counterinsurgency. Like that felt good. Ooh, I loved that video. Right. But after it was over, and then my fucked up police video is probably the video I'm most proud of, like in terms of like I really like hit a point that like needed to be hit. But after it was over, Dr. Ball can tell I called him up and I was almost in tears. I was like, yo, this is wrong. This is this is still being done through Google. And I'm gonna collect this check and be happy that I made this statement. But like the machinations behind this shit is not there's something wrong with that video being existing to a certain extent. After I made Fuck the Police, I became the authority on abolition. I'm not an authority on abolition. I talked to experts. I read enough articles and research to make a good video, put real like authorities in that bitch, and then made the video. But the way this works, the media apparatus, even beyond just like, I don't want to call it, the way this works, I have so many people reach out to me. Yeah, I want to talk to you about abolition. And I say, no, holla at such and such. That's what you really want.
That's how you do.
But other folks don't.
It's all good. Right. Yeah.
And
but
that's the problem. Because it gets hard to say no.
But not a problem for you.
Yeah, but
that's not true. You didn't did what you fulfilled your obligation. And beyond that, you know, so be it. I've been out here accused. I've been called a closeted homosexual by the manosphere and the Black straight pride movement, and I've been called.
There's a Black straight pride movement. Please tell me that's something you just made up joke on them niggas.
Well, it initially was a couple of decades. It was the Black decency movement. No, the irritated genie.
Oh wow!
And Kush the Black unifier. He kind of fell off.
And
their argument was that Black people are the scum of the earth, and that our immorality is the source of our oppression. And if we start to behave ourselves, then freedom will materialize before us.
Of course.
So, but yeah,
pull your pants up.
You ain't seen that thing where the man is holding the red, black, and green umbrella as the rainbow rain descends on his family, and
I've seen my fair share of Hotep art. That one doesn't ring a bell, but it makes sense considering the things I saw in real life.
Like I said, I've been called a closeted gay over there, and then the Black divestment movement calls me a Hotep and a sexist. You just have to do the right thing, and then let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
That's what Garvey had to do. That's what Malcolm had to do. And yes, I'm comparing us to them. And that's what anybody who tries to takes the position, because I know a lot of people who work and don't publicly articulate any positions. They just grind away. That was my position for a long time. I'm relatively new to speaking publicly. And once you do, it's the same thing in the streets. When you're organizing, you know, my wife and I are out here working on this, trying to sustain the abolition of cash bail in Chicago and the rest of Illinois. And that's the work we're doing. People out here calling it, oh, this is what they call that movie where crime is legal. The Purge.
The Purge.
The Chicago Purge. People gonna say all kind of dumb shit. And I'm not like, oh.
And they do it every time, and it's so effective. That movie is the word. That movie is the Obama of action thrillers, because it just made the concept so feasible to people that they have no clue how it's being used.
I haven't even seen it.
It's good for what it is.
With the first movie, I just couldn't get through it.
It doesn't actually get good till the later movies, actually. The first movie is more of like a thriller, almost slasher, whereas everyone after that is more of like a political espionage action, dark thing. You should try
so
like
media. It's so much.
Yeah, 2 through.
I just prefer all I do when I have time to watch TV. I rewatch The Wire, and then I rewatch Breaking Bad. I'm a true middle-aged man. So I'm almost through Breaking Bad.
That's unpeeled for real.
And rewatch The Wire, and then on the holidays I watch Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, that's
I'm mad basic.
They call that unpeeled for real. That's
it.
Yeah, that's truly
right. That's all I want. And my wife is like, every time I want to watch something, here you is watching this same stuff over and over. You don't want to watch.
Yeah, you missing out on some good stuff. Some stuff that'll definitely get you. Man, because the way, like, I had a video that I was planning, and I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, about I may end up like creating, like melding it with a Kamala critique post-election. But I was gonna talk about how Obama was like the harbinger for the final, like the final solution to black media. Because like before Obama, black media had its problems, but it was still predominantly for black people. And then after Obama, there's this whole new market of black media for white audiences. And almost everything, some stuff is good. I like Atlanta. I like Insecure, but those shows exist specifically in a white people come to, invited to the cookout kind of like paradigm. You know what I'm saying? And like you see less and less. And then I know there's better stuff out now. People tell me like the Shy was real good.
No. Oh, you know
No.
what was good as hell?
Mm.
South Side.
Maybe I'm thinking the South Side. That's what I'm thinking of. I got a homeboy that
Excellent.
actually wrote on that. But no, yeah, not the Shy. The South Side is exactly one. The Shy
South
is like the drama that was
masterpiece.
all kind of over the place.
Got canceled because it was good.
Yeah.
Grand Crew was entertaining too.
Grant Crew?
Grand Crew.
Never even heard of that one. See,
That's why they
I'm checked out.
keep it out. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. I want to go ahead and start rapping. So,
Oh, now we're getting started.
yeah. Well, no, now we're getting started. I was going to give you like kind of the last word on, kind of like, solidifying your thesis on not just approaching this election, but also like approaching the election. You know what I'm saying? Because one of the things, I guess for me, one of the things I'm most annoyed by is the amount of noise. It feels very counterinsurgency, the amount of noise just in the debate when each one of these people after the elections, like half of these people after the election's over, we're never going to hear from again. And the other half are going to go back to doing exactly what they were doing politically, good and bad, before. So it just feels like this is a toxic family reunion that we have every 2 to 4 years for no reason, other than it drives traffic, it drives clicks. You know what I'm saying? And it does not, and it drives clicks because it's so volatile. When in reality, your take, I think, is the take to have. This shit ain't that deep. Here's some obvious strategical positions to take. You also should be working in between, which is the thing I'm trying to level up for myself going forward. And then like keep it moving.
And politics are bottom up.
Mm.
Your vote for your alderman, city council person, your water reclamation district, it's often more crucial. Like I voted for, my main issue voting in the most recent gubernatorial race was a moratorium on the death penalty, leading to an ultimate abolition of the death penalty in Illinois. Because black people are overrepresented, and many of those black people are potentially innocent, were coerced or framed by the Chicago Police Department. And that's what I voted for. And I also voted for more progressive taxation, and to amend the Constitution to get rid of the flat tax.
There's a flat tax in Chicago?
Yeah.
I guess it's I guess when I think about it, like certain things weren't taxed at all in Chicago when I grew, because I grew up in Calumet City. And I remember thinking that way more things were taxed when I got to Atlanta than in Calumet City, and thinking that was probably a good thing, but actually I'm realizing that's probably just some flat tax shit.
Yeah. It's whack as hell. Well, yeah, in the city for Cook County and for the state. But when I go to the polls, there's specific things I'm there. I'm not trying to get anything from the government that the government doesn't have the capacity to give me. I'm not seeking anything from the government that the government has the capacity. And I'm not giving shit to this government that they can't take from me by force. I'm not patriotic. I'm not pro-American. I am a reluctant by birth citizen of the United States. And I will utilize that and understand and comprehend that to advance my short and long-term interests, my local, national, and Pan-African interest across the globe. So it's not really complex. I'm not voting for no motherfucking, neither one of the Democrat candidates. But here's another thing about third party people, because I'm predominantly 90% of the time I'm voting third party.
Mhm.
And we talk about how wrong people who vote Democrat are, but we don't talk about the missteps and the fuckery within the third party arena, the socialist and the Green Party predominantly. I don't even talk about the libertarian and all them other
We
right
ain't gonna get
wing
into
third
our
parties.
brother
Over there,
Cornell
you
and
brain dead coon. So I'm not talking to you, but people who vote for progressive and leftist third parties. These third parties are playing with y'all. They do not engage. They play to play, they don't play to win. They don't have on the ground. And I know there's a lot of deficits within the system. But I don't understand that why there's not the I just went to another event where Claudia and Karina, her representative, was there giving out flyers. It was the most absurd, ugly political flyer I ever seen in my life. You can't tell me.
you can't find no talented 19-year-old
Did you see
socialist.
the flyer?
No, I haven't seen
It
that
was
one.
like paragraph after paragraph. Like, ain't nobody reading this shit. Wasn't no identifiable logo. Wasn't no stars or patriotic or militant symbology on there. It was the worst political flyer. As someone who has designed political flyers for successful campaigns, Lee Barnes, I think he still owe me money for the work I did to get the school board. No, I'm not lying. Lee Barnes don't owe me a dime. I'm joking. But I designed his book. I'm like, y'all play around. The Green Party jumps on. People hear from them every 4 years, even though I know that's not what they do, but that's the perception that they have. They need to focus on local election, low-level bureaucratic elected positions. They just are comfortable with being right. And many people on the left are comfortable with being right.
Yeah.
And they're comfortable with losing
I'm,
because they're
I
right.
have a new slogan I'm testing out that niggas want to be right, but they don't want to be correct, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but
And
go ahead.
no,
Yeah.
that was it. Cause it's like
Yeah.
you want it so nobody can tell you was wrong, but you ain't really worried about if this was the proper choice to take to win at the end of the day. You just want to be able to
Tell
say,
you, I'm gonna say something that's gonna kind of put me in Idi Amin Stalinist territory.
"Oh, we love that here. It's all good."
The only morality is victory.
Mm.
You can only define something as good from a revolutionary perspective if it advanced the mission and agenda of the revolution or subvert and challenges the mission and agenda of our enemies and oppressors. That's the only way you can define it. So just simply doing something, doing the right thing is inadequate. It might help you sleep at night, which that is something, because I truly try to advocate, and I know this term self-care has been greatly corrupted. It's commodified and corrupted, but the mental and physical homeostasis and well-being of people out here making a positive contribution to the just aspirations of African people, I value that as much as I value the larger collective struggle. So maybe voting what you would define as principled, fuck principled voting, fuck trying to find a good versus lesser or greater evil. It's all fucking evil. If the day I decide to run for a elected office within the empire, I'm one of the evils. Just like there's no good politician, there's no lesser evil cop. It is intrinsically, institutionally evil. And in order to qualify to be a part of it, you have to accept that you're also joining evil. Ain't no such thing as a good politician, but there is a such thing as a vulnerable politician, a receptive politician, a receptive politician. And that's who you want. You're not trying to vote for someone who's going to save you. You're going to vote for someone who is in the weakest position to stop you from saving yourself. And then you can begin to have that discussion. But that's a more complex discussion. I don't want to use the word nuance because Jared's always spitting that word out at me and I slap it down every time. So I don't think I put myself in a position. But you have to say, who can I more effectively organize against and mobilize? And these doomers and these what they call it, the people who think, well, the worst politician, if we could get a Hitler at the helm of American government, then the
that'll
people
get
will be
us.
forced to wake up. That's not how things have worked on a historical level. And we've shown with community and mass movement, one of the things that motivates mass movements and drives and lays the foundation is a level of optimism.
Mm.
When people think things can be changed, when people think they can be effective, they're more likely to act.
One of the things I throw out during this debate with people is that Occupy Wall Street and Black Lives Matter, the spirit, not the official organization, both started under Obama. And I don't think that's like kind of thought about enough. And then shit happened under Trump. We yelled, all the white women wore pink hats. and then
afternoon.
Yeah. And then that was it. And try to balance addressing the unique Schrodinger's oppressed state of white women.
well, Howard Zinn called them the intimately oppressed.
Intimately oppressed.
And I used to use that, but now I call them the persecuted predators. Because even with that whole believe women stuff, I'm like, I'll never say believe women. There's too many mutilated and lynched Black men and women who got to that position through white women's lives for me to ever to blankly. So I can comfortably and loudly say, believe Black women. And all of the Me Too shit I had to say specifically for Black women, because white women are persecuted. You cannot deny white women's persecution under patriarchy and the theocracies coming out of her community and culture and history. But she has also been, to the extent that the patriarchal system has allowed it, she has fully exercised her predatory inclination.
Love that shit.
Targeted and vulnerable populations. So the only limits on her predatory impulses have been patriarchy and sexism.
Right. It's been the white men they're tethered to in a weird way.
Exactly. So I like the word intimately oppressed. I think it's accurate for a white man to say that, but we Black folks call white women persecuted predators. Yeah. And then you work from that understanding.
Yeah. One last thing, actually, because I forgot you're in Chicago. How you feel about, because I'm not keeping up with Chicago politics, the brother that got elected mayor a little while ago, I had so much hope for, and my cousins don't speak.
Inspiration, you got your vocabulary is off.
My bad. I had misguided hope for. Is the honest response. My cousins who are further right than me in a lot of ways are not happy with them over like what sounds like, I was like, I ain't about to argue this about, but this sounds like this is like, y'all worried about the Mexicans in Chicago? Did I miss something? Venezuela, and I was Venezuelans
are the new Mexicans.
Right.
So I'm glad at least it's helping these hateful motherfuckers with geography. Because anybody speaking Spanish is Mexican in the Midwest. You know,
but yeah,
at least you got to learn, if you're going to be a hater, they have to learn a little bit of geography.
But what's going on with him? Because he, to me, was like the first, I think, professed socialist to get elected a mayor. And I mean, probably not.
Bernie was a socialist.
Right. But still, like, you know, what are your thoughts, if you don't mind?
He hasn't nationalized one business in this. He hasn't nationalized. I got a small business here. He can come nationalize my little business. I'd be happy to. Shit.
but how's he doing though? Like from a more radical perspective, because I don't know what's going on.
I think he has a level of timidity and insecurity that's not justified. I think he was elected for a mandate that he is too insecure. I think he thinks too much about headlines and re-election. I think his heart is in the right place for a bureaucrat. He's not a revolutionary. He's not a liberationist. I don't judge him by that yardstick. I tend to judge. If you come and tell me I'm a Christian, then I'm not going to judge you from my atheist perspective. I'm going to look at you from the lens of what you claim you are. So I think, like I said, he is a competent bureaucrat. I don't regret voting for him. I don't think he's exhibiting enough. The office of mayor in this city is extremely powerful.
Right.
In most
And that was kind
May
of something I was frustrated
many
about because I felt
mayors
like,
in many other districts are like glorified council members.
yeah, but not Chicago.
No, they have real power thanks to the Daily Crime family. And they're handpicked, and the Daily Crime family handpicked the following two mayors after that: Lori Lightfoot on our necks, and Rahm Emanuel. So I do think he is sincere in his progressive ideas. He is a solid union man and one of the progressive unionists. But I don't think, and this is the problem where people, when you lie on the application and get your job, this is a smash mouth machine city that only respects not just power, but brutally used power. And every time when you have a centrist or right winger, they come in not asking, kicking
Yeah.
ass and taking that. What do right wing people say? I got to watch more
Kicking
wrestling.
ass, kicking ass and
They
taking
come in,
names,
they
stumping
come
mud
in kicking
holes.
ass and taking
Even though,
names.
even though
Come in,
Stone Cold is actually the two people you'd have thought be the most racist are actually some of the most progressive
yeah,
wrestlers. That's Stone
right.
Cold and
Like them,
fucking
I came here to chew
JBL.
bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
Yeah.
When right wing politicians, but when the mayor, we've had. I was about to say we only had two black mayors, but
Lori
Lori
Lightfoot.
Life, the jury's still out. If we can take blackness from Kamala, then I reserve for myself to rescind anybody's blackness for any reason. But the same thing with Harold Washington. People thought when Harold Washington took over that he would seek vengeance for the decades and generations of political antagonism and subversion that the local government has exercised against the black community. And the Irish faction, the Polish factions, and the various other non-black factions around the city were bracing themselves for a political blow, bracing themselves for political retribution that never came. He got up in front of the Chicago and the world and said, I'm going to be more than fair. After decades of injustice and unfairness, he thought he could remedy by simply being fair. And then one thing, y'all can say what y'all want about Claude Anderson, but when he got up there and said, I don't want to be equal, I want to get even. And that's what people, and so now when they elected Brandon Johnson, they already knew he's going to be conciliatory. He's going to try to compromise. He wants to bring people together and give everyone a seat at the table, even though you give a seat at the table of people who've been under the table for 50 years,
right,
to the same people who sat at the helm of the table instead of kicking them motherfuckers under the table. So there should have been a purge. There should have
real
been a
one.
lot of shit that I would have advised him to do, because I actually, in the
Because it don't
primary,
sound like he
I was,
gonna win.
huh?
It don't sound like he gonna make it for a second term. Unless they, I mean,
Depends
especially
on
if
who
they
they
run
put
them
up.
a Eric Adams type.
Yeah, it depends on who
Niggas,
they put up against him.
yeah,
Yeah, because he's soft. He's not hard enough to consolidate his base, and he's too soft to be real opposition to his enemies.
Mm.
And I don't know why he doesn't just come hard in the paint and be uncompromising. He literally has little to nothing to lose. But they always get up there and try to play politics.
right,
But they don't understand that there's no fixed formula for politics. And Trump created it so extremists are now mainstream.
mm.
There's no much such thing as extremism in the US political arena. It might return, but right now, extremists are mainstream. So, but the left and the progressive just refuse to be extremist left, even though they're calling him a communist, a socialist, a leftist. They're calling Kamala a communist. They called Obama a Mau Mau. I always was like, I wish the lies that the right told about Obama
Were true. Please, Mao
so,
Mao. Please, President Mao Mao.
so yeah, Brandon Johnson has some just, sane, rational, and potentially effective policies that he's trying to negotiate and win people over to, as opposed to just coming bulldozing that shit through. And he should only have people that are either at his level of progressivism or to the left. But he's surrounded with people that are maybe at his level or to the right of him.
Mm.
So anyway, but beyond that,
I mean,
they
that's a
the
microcosm for It's best
But
case scenario for a lot of these motherfuckers. Yeah.
but a lukewarm progressive is too much for the right wing power structure in this city. So the corporate media is attacking him. The corporate infrastructure, the institutional powers are attacking him, and the black community is out there belly aching and complaining. And this same black community that allowed Daley to rule
With an
over
iron fist.
generations. And they got black people always, whenever a black person stand up, I will not vote for you again. You giving Venezuelans $50 million, less than 1% of the overall budget. And now the black city council members, everybody's coming at him and expecting him in less than one term to correct problems that were created over a century.
Generations.
They are mad at him for not correcting and turning around problems in one term that were created over because there's short-term thinking, reactionary emotionalism. And so
And I
I don't
think
know if he'll get another term. The powers that be might think, yeah, he's got a lot of progressive clout and a progressive status, but he rules from the center. We're able to push him and keep him in the center, and we're able to limit it, his progressivism to rhetoric, as opposed and limit it in terms of policy and implementation and enforcement. So he might get another
term to just be
term.
ineffective.
But again, I was working on Ford, State Representative Ford, who was making a bid to be mayor of Chicago. And I came in and was writing his policy platform and one of the grunts on his campaign. And I said, your campaign should be decolonize Chicago.
Mm.
And explain to the black community and the larger white community what a colony is, how colonies functions, and then compare the corporate interests and the entrenched institutional investor and elite class up and down the Gold Coast and how they treat our communities. Even though we're American citizens, it does not exempt us from being colonized and hyper exploited by the same forces that do it overseas, that do it in Haiti. And he said, I can't say that. I can't use that type of language. And lost like a motherfucker. He probably would have lost if he did it, but now I do get to say when I see Rep Ford. I mean, but he maintained his, and he's again the best we can hope for is competent bureaucrats. Vulnerable, competent bureaucrats is the best political situation we can hope for at this stage of black struggle in
One
relationship to the
last thing I want to throw out there, and we wrap up. You spoke to the need for education, because it's like these black folks that are come that's church mouse quiet under Daley are pouting about Venezuelans under Jackson,
Brandon Johnson.
Johnson, and at its simplest, the simplest explanation for that is the lack of political education, and that's been a big thing I've been trying to master through my content, because I think I am a great case study on how the political miseducation works and how it's reversed. And we just need a lot more of that, because I don't think niggas are as lost as they seem sometimes. I know I've heard you say you don't feel that way sometimes.
What?
But I've seen some of your videos. It don't seem like you feel that way sometimes, but I don't think niggas is as lost as we seen sometimes. It's just that we haven't been presented with what we can understand as realistic venues for moving in a different direction. It's been limited. You know what I'm saying? You disagree?
Yeah, I disagree wholeheartedly. Our problem is not lack of education. If you have an individual or a population that just simply doesn't have access to instructions, they generally can arrive at accurate assessments and understandings. We are not in a space, if we were simply in a space where we didn't have education or access to information, we'd be just fine. The problem is we are relentlessly bombarded by miseducation and misinformation. We are subjected to unrelenting indoctrination and supporting propaganda of that indoctrination. So it's much different. Talking to an uneducated person versus an indoctrinated person are two different experiences. Indoctrination makes you immune to evidence,
Yeah.
to facts. It even distorts your own experience. Where a Black person can live in Chicago and all of their source of oppression has come from the state and white people, and then look at a Venezuelan and say, well, they're the ones who
Right.
made it bad for me. Up until 3 months ago, didn't know it, couldn't find
I
Venezuelans
can't
on the map.
find Venezuela on the map right now. All my
Right.
degrees.
Didn't
I
know
know
what
it's
a
somewhere down
Venezuelan was.
there.
Never heard of Hugo Chavez. Never heard of Maduro. Thought that was a new burrito on the market.
A
Didn't
new
know
drink.
shit
That's a new
about shit.
cocktail.
Don't know anything about the Bolivarian Revolution, and turn these people who were non-factors in your life to the core people eating your lunch and stealing your resources. Where they literally spend $500 million on a political miseducation campaign to misinform Black people about the unjust tax system of Chicago that favors the multinational corporations, high-end real estate investors, and wealthy investors and foreign economic interest. Spent $500 million to misinform us on the campaign, and got Black people in the street protesting and threatening to riot over $50 million given to refugees. And not even paying attention to the 10 times
Actual
that amount
shit.
spent on misinformation. So our problem is not lack of education. Our problem is we don't have counter indoctrination and counter propaganda. This is not simply about teaching a student. It's about waging intellectual and psychic warfare. If it was simply a matter of miseducation, and I could just sit everybody around and simply tell them false facts versus fiction and present them with the evidence, that would be a very easy task. The number one threat to African people is menticide. Menticide is the number one threat because not only does it stop us from organizing to address the existential threats against African people, it prevents us from even comprehending that have an existential threat. And menticide is not about not having education. It is the systematic destruction of our very capacity to think. And that can't be remedied by giving, it's like what I say all the time, it's like giving a recipe book to a starving person. You know?
Yeah. And
You can know
that's
how to cook, but if you don't have the resources and the pots, the pans, the gas, and the food, having the recipe don't mean shit to you. So having the right answers in textbooks and peer-reviewed articles is us. We got the recipe that we're trying to articulate to people who don't have the material resources to carry to absorb and execute. So no, we need counter propaganda, counter indoctrination. Our people are anti-analytical, ahistorical, and apolitical. And we are not to blame for this condition, but we are responsible for correcting it. So you can't simply rest on being an I have to listen. We can't be educated. My wife is a professor. We can't rest on being educators. I don't want her kicking the door. We have to be
propagandists.
and we have to employ counter indoctrination. It's not a fair fight, and we should not fight fair. We should be at, one more thing, and then I'll stop saying inflammatory stuff.
No, I love it.
George Jackson said,
I've talked the least. This is the least talk podcast I've made for my own channel. But that was my goal for bringing you in. But go ahead.
Good men better learn to love cutting throats as much as wicked men do. I don't understand why I don't hear it as much as I used to, but people used to always talk about divide and conquer. Oh, they're trying to divide and conquer us. But then when we look at them, we say they all the same. Ain't no difference between Democrats and Republicans. They all the same. So we don't even entertain the thought of dividing and conquering and exploiting like I said, how you got white folks running up in their Capitol building smearing feces on the wall. There's obviously some chinks in the armor of the white cabal. And we don't have any way of exploiting that. We just join one faction or the other instead of establishing our own faction and manipulating the other two factions. So I understand, and I know your heart is in the right place, but you can't simply rest on being an educator. You have to engage in liberatory, radical, revolutionary propaganda.
That's what I am aspiring to. And that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to be less overtly political. I think I'm really proud of, there's probably some things I would change about it, but I was really proud of like my Black Panther video,
That's
right?
cool.
Because, maybe I was too easy on some certain elements, but I got to tell the story of the Patrice Lumumba to a million people
Right.
that would never have known that. This Kid and Play video and even the Drake video, because they both had the same thesis, which is hip hop's been cooked from the jump, and y'all didn't even realize
it. That's why I would ask. I was like, "Oh, hip hop ain't black no more." I'm like, "Hip hop was never black." I'm sorry.
Never black. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they cooked us from jump.
I
And
like the Cosby video. Listen, I've been banging on Cosby since 1989.
Yeah. You was early.
People was coming at me, man. You don't know. You don't know. And I hear people always talk about how he send all these people to school. I've been around academics and in academia at least since, 1996. And I ain't met one person that got their tuition paid by Cosby. Like, where the fuck are they? But I don't know.
A handful of people in hush money
got
girls.
$1 from the United Negro College Fund. I used to watch that telethon. But
and that video, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
That video, until my Drake video, was my most watched video.
As it should be.
And I was so proud. I just because I got a lot of different audiences. Black political commentary is underdeveloped on YouTube. It's more prominent on Instagram, which is a problem because Instagram doesn't allow for complex, in-depth stuff.
TikTok.
Yeah, and TikTok. TikTok's better overall, but it's still like,
you need to come over to TikTok.
Yeah, no, you don't. You don't need to come over to TikTok. You can actually, no, you should, but your goal should be to funnel people, because TikTok, your particular presentation, we can cut it. We got it. First of all, before I get to that, you got anything you want to promote or throw out there just to let folks know what's going on with you?
African World Order. That's the new page, collaboration with Skip. Go over to African World Order. Be on the lookout for Radio Free Jafrica, which is Skip Coon's first studio album in 10 years. And you can go over to African World Order, all one word, and listen to a blow-by-blow, play-by-play of description and inspiration for the album. Album's dropping soon. And so definitely African World Order. Aside from that, at Diallo Kenyatta, you can find me on the socials and all of that. And if you're in the city of Chicago on the South Side, holla at me. I'll go get a oat milk latte, and we can chop it up here and conspire.
Yeah, I'm a South Side, like most Black folks that ever make it out of Chicago. I do need to pay my mom a visit. Is it we good? Okay. I had some people working on some stuff. Yes, that's dope. Thank you so much for coming on, man. This was a pleasure. I'm sorry to disappoint people.
I'm sorry I couldn't.
Yeah, it should have been more of a wrestling match. I know some people are looking for that.